Now, as we get started, our first speaker is going to be Mr. Matt Patterson. Let me quickly tell you about Matt. Matt Patterson is Senior Fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute's Center for Economic Freedom. Previously, he served as a political coordinator for the Rudy Giuliani presidential campaign and researcher for Charles Krautheimer. He writes regularly on labor issues for such publications as Washington Times, New York Post, Fox News, and many others. Please help me welcome Matt Patterson.
Thank you. Hi, I'm the outsider. Thank you, Mark, for the generous invitation to speak to you all today. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Matt Patterson. I live in Washington, D.C. It says Senior Fellow on my business card. Really, I'm a writer. I write about labor issues. I study labor unions and labor economy for a living. And it's my great joy to be able to participate in this debate that's so important to your town. This is actually my third or fourth trip down here this summer, and I see some of my new friends in the audience, so thank you all for coming. So, let's talk about unions. But let's talk about one specific union in particular. The UAW. We all know that the United Auto Workers Union would like to organize the Volkswagen plant here in Chattanooga. There's a lot of talk about what that could mean for the plant and for the community. I think my role here tonight, as I understand it, and I'm happy to do it, is just to provide maybe some background information to make it a more informed debate and provide a little context. So let's get started. I brought pictures, so that's me. Whose business is it? Let's address this first of all. I hear this a lot as I've been coming to town and talking to so many of you. A lot of people say, well, it's only up to the factory workers, it's only their business. And it's true that it is up to the factory workers whether they want to have a union. Absolutely, it's their legal right, no one contests that. The problem with that is that whatever they decide will not just affect factory workers, it'll affect everyone in Chattanooga, and really everyone in Tennessee and everyone in the United States, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. Free and fair labor markets would be ideal, in my opinion. The problem with labor unions as they're organized in the United States is that they create an atmosphere where we don't really have a free and fair labor market. And this is one of the reasons it makes it everybody's business. Unions are able to take advantage of laws and regulations that privilege them over other private entities and individuals, which makes it an unfair and unfree labor market in many cases. So that's why it's everyone's business, that's why it's my business, that's why it's your business, that's why it's Mark's business, and so that's why we're all talking about this. So what is the UAW anyway? The United Auto Workers Union, founded in the 1930s with the help of legendary labor leader Walter Reuther. President is a gentleman named Bob King. There he is. He and I have similar taste in glasses, but that's probably all we agree on. The UAW represents not just auto workers, they also represent agricultural workers and aerospace. They have about 390,000 members in the US, Puerto Rico, and Canada. And this is their mission statement, and you can see it right there. Fighting for social justice for all workers globally. And that comes right from their website. And by the way, this presentation, the entirety of it, is going to be up on our website, workplacechoice.org, including our sources. I invite you all tonight, go home, check our sources, check our facts, and enjoy this again. So what does he mean by social justice? Why would a labor union be interested in social justice? That's a very curious question. It's something that's sort of preoccupied my writing for years. Labor unions in the United States have lately especially not just been interested in representing their workers to management. They've in fact been broadly political, and I would say extreme in many cases. Just to give you an example, the United Auto Workers Union in particular, they support left-wing causes and liberal politicians at the state, local, and national level. Bob King calls these politicians his progressive allies. In an article published in the Detroit News in May of this year, King called for, quote unquote, the people to retake the House of Representatives in 2014. Now, I don't know if you guys were at the elections in 2012, but as far as I'm concerned, all the people of the United States had their choice to elect their representatives. But that's not what Bob King means. He means, of course, liberal politicians. That's what he means by people. And King has bragged that he and his progressive allies, quote, scored a huge victory in November when we re-elected President Barack Obama. And in fact, unions in general, and the UAW in particular, has been a staunch supporter of the president's broadly liberal and progressive agenda, including Obamacare, which has amounted to about the largest tax increase in United States history and is going to be killing jobs and stifling growth for decades to come. So, they're political. What do they spend their money on? A lot of politics. Unions have a lot of money. A lot of that money comes from dues from their members. Unfortunately, a lot of that money goes to fund activities and politicians that their members may not agree with. A lot of people don't know that. The Wall Street Journal just recently reported that between 2005 and 2011, unions spent $4.4 billion on politics. Let me say that in my Carl Sagan voice. Billions and billions spent on politics. They do this through political action committees, mostly. A political action committee, or a PAC, is an entity, a legal entity, which allows them to spend money on politics. During the 2012 election cycle, the UAW's PAC gave $1.6 million to federal candidates. 99% of that went to liberals. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about millions of dollars when you add in local, state, and federal candidates, in addition to individual causes. So that's what they spend their money on, to a large degree. This, of course, allows them a lot of influence, you can imagine. Let's just take a look at Detroit, which, as Mark mentioned, we got some very sad news about Detroit. Not unexpected, unfortunately, but very sad. And the truth of the matter is, the UAW has been deeply and intimately involved in the politics of Detroit for decades. They have helped elect the types of politicians that have run that once great city into the ground. Let me give you just a recent example. One of the more recent Detroit mayoral candidates, Benny Napoleon, enthusiastically endorsed by the UAW and Bob King because, quote unquote, he has stood with union leaders. But the Detroit Free Press reported that as Wayne County Sheriff, Napoleon was poised to exceed his $85 million budget by at least $25 million. In other words, the UAW supports politicians that are good for union bosses, but very, very bad for city budgets. And that's all you really need to know to understand what happened to Detroit today, I think. I got a flip and press. It's kind of... Here's the bottom line. You can bet the United Auto Workers will throw their political and monetary weight around Chattanooga as well. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So why Chattanooga? Good question. I get asked this a lot. The United Auto Workers Union has been in a drastic decline. I would call it a free fall since its height in 1979 when it had about 1.5 million members. Now they have about 390,000. That's a decline of about 74% in a couple of decades, 3 decades. As a result of that, Bob King has recognized and admitted, and I think he's right, that they need to organize the foreign-owned auto plants in the South, in places like Tennessee, places like Mississippi, for them to have a future as a union, as an organization. I think that's a correct assessment of his organization's existential crisis. However, they're not having a very good time of it. They've tried to organize other plants throughout the South, Canton, Mississippi, other places here in Tennessee. They failed repeatedly, largely, in my opinion, because the workers in those places have not felt like they needed a union. But since Bob King has sort of staked his reputation and his organization's future on organizing down here, they need a win. And so they're making a stand here in Chattanooga today. There's no question the UAW needs Chattanooga. The question is, does Chattanooga need the UAW? So let's talk about their record. Why is their membership declining so drastically? Well, it's not really a mystery. If you cannibalize the industry that you organized, and that industry is forced to shed jobs by the thousands, you will lose members. It's that simple. It's a sad irony that by helping to destroy the industry it organized, it also destroyed itself to a large degree. It has made the auto industry in Detroit less profitable and less productive compared to non-unionized automakers in the South, which has forced the big three to shed jobs. And that, I think, is a stone-cold fact, and I think it is the central fact of this debate. In fact, according to Reuters, which did a really great survey of the entire automotive industry recently, let me just read you this quote. Since 2001, the Detroit Three have slashed over 200,000 jobs. 200,000. In the same period, foreign automakers have opened 8 assembly plants in the United States, creating almost 20,000 factory jobs. In fact, almost every job lost at a U.S. car factory in the last 30 years has occurred at a unionized company. Let's just put that up again, shall we? Now let's talk about the source of this sentence. This is not a conservative free market organization. This is Reuters. This is an international news service. They hire their own economists, their own analysts to write these reports, and this was their assessment. And I think it's accurate. And sad. Let's talk about the most famous case, General Motors. Everyone knows it went bankrupt 2009. Why? A lot of reasons. Union was one of them, for sure. Unsustainable costs driven by UAW contracts were a big part of the reason. A 2008 study by the Heritage Foundation found that UAW workers were costing the big three over $70 an hour in wages and current and future benefits. When you understand that, the bankruptcy of GM was pretty much a foregone conclusion. But we saved GM. Well, who saved GM? You did, I did. We paid for that. We all bailed General Motors out. Well, let's be honest. We bailed the union out. We handed over a car company to the union to the tune of about $50 billion. That's the benefits of their political power. You know, when you help elect politicians who are in your corner, you can get sweet bailouts. Let's be clear about what the General Motors bailout really was. The General Motors bailout was a public gift to Barack Obama's private friends. That's really what that was all about. And that's a disgrace. But they say it's a new UAW. You hear this a lot from the union and the representatives. It's not like the old days, they tell you. We're a new union. Let me just read you one quote from Bob King. The 21st century UAW no longer views management as our adversaries, but as partners in innovation and quality. Our new relationships with these employers are built on a foundation of respect, shared goals, and a common mission. I read that as a implicit, maybe not so implicit, admission on the part of Bob King that the old way of doing things was very bad for business. So it's very important that he convince you that it's not going to be like that anymore. We have to hope that they changed. And I think we all know how hope and change has worked out when it's been tried elsewhere. Okay, Detroit. Obviously, I made this slide before the unfortunate news today. It's all still valid. What happened to Detroit? In 1950, thereabouts, it had the highest per capita income of any city in the United States. While the rest of the world lay in ruins because of World War II, Detroit was the beating industrial heart of the United States. It was a shining, gleaming example of our economic power. And what has happened? Population dropped from 1.85 million in 1950 to 700,000. This year, Forbes ranked Detroit America's most miserable city. Neither the first nor the last time it's been on a list like that. Official unemployment at 10%, and I say official because those are the numbers based on unemployment statistics that the government calculates, but the real number, probably closer to 40% of people in Detroit don't have a full-time job. And it's empty. 30,000 empty houses, 90,000 vacant lots. It's gotten so bad in Detroit that the mayor had actually had to propose bulldozing a quarter of the city. Bulldozing. An American mayor. Think about it. Is the UAW to blame for this? Not entirely. Some part, definitely. Like we talked about how they've helped elect the politicians that have made these bad decisions. The truth is that Detroit is the capital of the UAW. They own that city, and they have for years. So the problem with unions. Look, I'm a free market guy. I'm a libertarian-minded guy. I believe in freedom of association. In a perfect world, you know, if people wanted to band together to form an association, it'd be nobody else's business but theirs. But this isn't a perfect world. Ever since the National Labor Relations Act was established in the New Deal, union-backed politicians have stacked the deck in favor of unions in hundreds of ways at the expense of everyone else. And in ways that distort the labor market, hurt growth, and actually kill jobs. And exhibit number one is Detroit. Thank you very much for your time. And Mark, back to you.